Hey guys, it's Jedi Lex, and welcome to the 15th episode of Beyond Tatooine, where I bring on different Star Wars collectors to talk about how their love of Star Wars originated, as well as take a look at and chat about their collections. And on today's episode, I have Jose from GeneralKenobisBunker. So how are you doing today?
Hello there. How's everybody doing?
Okay, hello there. I like that. So can you tell us a little bit about your channel, what you focus on, and where people can find you if they aren't already following you already?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first of all, thank you for having me. Appreciate the
Yeah.
invite. Second, the channel and all our socials are under General Kenobi's Bunker. And on YouTube, of course, we do toy hunting. We do toy reviews and collectible reviews. We also do a lot of reactions and sort of like we dissect whatever show is going on for Star Wars. So we like to go live for that. Usually at least once a week. I do have a semi-regular show on Wednesday nights called The High Ground, where we do something like this. We like to bring in, different members from the community, showcase their work, their collections, what got them into Star Wars right initially, all that kind of stuff. So again, I appreciate it if you guys check it out. We are on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and also YouTube. And I actually have a second YouTube channel where I produce pretty much the same content, but in Spanish. So that channel name is El Búnker del General Kenobi, which literally translates to General Kenobi's Bunker. You guessed it. So yeah, I would appreciate if you guys check us out there.
Yeah, absolutely. I didn't know that you had like a second channel. I think that's really cool that you do that. That's awesome.
Thanks. If I can, toot my own horn here a little bit, we actually just passed 500 subscribers on that one.
Nice.
It took a little bit. It took a little bit, but it's a little bit different, right? Even though the content is very very similar, of course. Um, the how can I say it? The audience is actually a little bit different. Um, I felt that with the regular channel, right? I had some engagement, started talking to other similar content creators and things like that. Fairly early on, like I felt that started getting to know one or two people here and there, like within maybe a couple months of me opening the channel. Whereas now I've had the Spanish content channel for about a year, and it's very hard. Like I think I've made maybe like two, maybe three connections, in the community, and I don't know. It's a little bit weird sometimes because the like the views, for example, or the watch hours tend to be better over there per episode.
Oh.
But there's like literally zero comments. Like nobody comments anything. Not even you suck or anything, like just nothing. Not good, not bad. It's just zero comments. So like I said, it's a little bit different. It's got it. Took me a little bit to sort of you know uh, make that distinction between the two channels, because I kind of expected the same thing as with the main channel, right? But like I said, it's a little bit, it's interesting. It's interesting to see some of the stats over there, how they're pretty different from the main channel.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it's cool though that you're kind of reaching into a new kind of section that I feel like a lot of us, because I don't think I think you're the first person that I've met now that like kind of does Star Wars content but in a different language. I
Oh,
didn't
thank
know
you.
that. I think that's really awesome, and kind of reaching out
Thanks.
to different parts of the community that are kind of like, I guess, untapped. So I feel like that's
Yeah,
pretty cool. But it's interesting that the views are different kind of, or like
it
maybe the
is.
interaction is, it's interesting because it's similar content, I would assume.
Yeah, very similar. So, well, maybe I'm going a little bit too much behind the scenes, but when I decided to do it, right? Okay, let me take it back all the way, I guess, to the beginning, when I was still thinking about my original channel, right? Just when I before I even opened the channel, um, one of my cousins actually suggested that why don't you create content in Spanish? Because there's not a whole lot, that does what we do, right? In Spanish. It's like, I think it'll be cool, and I thought about it, but I was like, man, I don't feel, I'm up to that level, or I think I'm gonna mess it up like easier. Not that I don't mess this up, by the way, but I so anyway, the point is I didn't do it, right? So I launched the main channel, regular, of course, all content in English, everything. Fast forward, like I said, up to last year, and I was like, you know what, I kind of feel like I've gotten enough hours, like recording, editing, all that stuff, right? I kind of feel like I got the process more or less, down. Again, for the type of videos that I do, which are very simple videos, right? Toy hunting videos, you can almost edit them on the go, right? As as you go from one store to the other. So it's not like super complicated. But I was like, well, maybe I just, I give it a shot. So I was like, okay. So I started doing it, and the first maybe couple videos, what I was trying to do was actually dub over myself, and I royally messed that up. I don't know what it is, but I couldn't get the timing right. It just sounded funky, like it didn't really match up to what you were seeing on screen. Anyway, so what I've been sort of doing since then is, I believe it or not, and I know it sounds kind of dumb, but I actually record twice. So when I go toy hunting, right, I'll make one pass for the main channel, then I'll literally come back and get a second pass, me narrating in Spanish. And I know that sounds kind of funky and kind of dumb, but when it comes to editing, that's a lot faster, right? Because you basically have two tracks, to complete different videos that you can kind of manipulate individually. So it's like I said, it's a little bit funky sometimes. But to your point, yeah, it's literally the same content, right? Because I just go and repeat it, uh, whatever I'm looking at the time, and just try to narrate it in Spanish. So, but yeah, I don't know. It's a little bit weird, how people don't engage, I guess is the term, over there nearly as much as with the main channel.
Gotcha. Yeah, I was gonna ask, my next question was, like, how do you kind of do that? Do you
Yeah,
dub over, like, the same video? Like, you'll do one take in English and then
yeah,
one in Spanish, and so, I mean, no, I totally get it. You gotta do what you gotta do
yeah,
for, to get the views out or the videos out, not the views, but
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, and I still do that. Even I was telling you behind before we started recording, I went to a little event today, and I ended up spending more time there. But because of that, I only did one pass. I only recorded once, right? So that one, for example, I will have to dub. Once I'm editing. So I still do it. But like I said, I found that I'm a little bit faster in the editing when I just have two tracks. Just do one, do the other, edit each one individually, and put out the individual video. But like I said, I still dub myself, which is weird, by the way. But yeah.
Yeah, no, so I get it. I have, like, a little bit of anxiety when I'm, like, out in public trying to, like, kind of voice certain
But
things, so I'll kinda just record in silence, and then I'll come back
yes,
home, and I'll kind of try to record, like, a dub for it because I
yes.
don't know, I get a little anxious, and I'm like, people are already probably looking at me that I'm
Oh, dude.
recording and, you
Yeah,
know.
that is probably the thing that took me the most to get used to, and I'm still not used to it. I'm a little bit better than I was, because I remember when I was trying being the keyword, trying to record my first toy hunt. And I remember I grabbed my cell phone, I raise it up to whatever shelf I'm looking at, and then one dude just like turns around and looks at me, and I'm like, nope. And I literally just like left like I didn't even record. I didn't even hit record, and I was just so nervous. Like I said, I was getting anxiety. I was like, I can't do this. This is weird. Like people are gonna think that I'm weird. And it was a little while before I tried it again, and I was like, you know what? Okay, who are these people, right? Like I don't know them, they don't know me. So I kind of psyched myself into doing it, but it still took a bit. And it still happens, every so often, especially when like there's times when the aisles are just more crowded, right, than others. You got little kids with their moms, and they're looking at you like, why are you
Yeah.
recording, why are you talking to the cell phone, like why are you talking about this one action figure being here for the past like 6 months or something like that. And so it's just kind of, yeah, it definitely takes getting used to. But it's also fun, right? And it's sort of part of the ride. But no, I totally get what you say.
Yeah, it was definitely because initially I would do, like, very short clips, like, I'd kinda just, like, peek my phone up, and I was like, "You know what?"
Yeah,
Like, I probably won't talk in public and, like, sit there and kinda, like, voice certain things, but I was like, at the end of the day, like, these people don't know me,
yeah,
like, they're not gonna care. They're gonna forget about this whole interaction in like a
Yeah.
couple minutes by the time they get over to like the dairy section.
Oh yeah.
And I was like, so I gotta just stop caring about what other people are gonna think because it's something that I enjoy doing and it's the content
Exactly.
that I like doing. So I kind of got past that portion of anxiety. So like I'll even walk around conventions with like a little gimbal now and I'm
Yeah.
like, I'm just gonna do what I gotta do. But the dubbing in public or like speaking in public, that
Yeah.
still gets to me. But I don't mind like kind of doing it at home. So like I'll go record, edit, kind of just talk to my mic and then add it in and go from there. But yeah, I think
Nice.
getting over that initial hurdle was like
Yeah.
really tough. So
No, yeah, absolutely. Like I said, and then I'll watch, of course, some people that they're just freaking naturals at it, right? Like they go like nothing. They describe everything they're seeing, on the spot. They don't even hesitate about names, brands, all of that. I don't think I'll ever be to that level as some of the uh, hunters right out there. But no, it's definitely fun. And like you said, right? I'm like, well, nobody's telling me not to do it, right? Like, first of all, it's not like it's illegal or anything like that.
yeah.
Like, it's just you in your own head, right? Just saying it's like, oh, like people are thinking this, thinking that. I'm like, yeah, but why am I stopping myself from doing something that I enjoy, like you said, right? Or something that I want to get out there and try to share. So yeah, I've gotten, like I said, a little bit better about it, but it still happens. Don't get me wrong. Like I still get sometimes psyched out, and I'll be like, nope, you know what? I'm just gonna go walk around. I'll come back to the toy aisle or something like that when people are gone, and I'll try again. So
Yeah.
I've done that plenty of times.
Oh, 100%. I mean, I feel like you aren't like a real toy hunter if you haven't done that before.
Exactly.
But
Yeah.
yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
that's
Agree.
if it's like super crowded, I try not to film because then I'm like, I don't want to get people in the video and
Yeah.
stuff like that. But yeah, I've definitely done like a walk around. I'm like, you know what? Let me go grab a couple things. I'll come back
Yeah.
and I'm gonna
Yeah.
hope that the stuff is still there and then
Yes.
we'll call it a day. But
It's funny you say that. One of my, I think it was the last one, maybe two hunts ago. So I was doing the process that I was describing, right? So I went, made the first pass, narrated in English. I go back to the beginning of the aisle. I start doing the Spanish one, and by the time I get, what was it? It was the He-Man Turtles mashup, I guess, crossover figures that are coming out.
mhm.
Turtles of Grayskull, I think that's what they're called. So it's Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles fused with He-Man, right? Basically. And I was like, oh, these are cool. I haven't seen it, blah, blah. Again, I go back like 2 minutes, to start the aisle again in Spanish, and they're gone, dude. Like, literally,
Ugh.
somebody just went like that and like took them all and like walked off. So I was like, wow, that was kind of crazy.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing that I've learned, and it sounds like weird, I'll just like if I'm scared that it's gonna not be there when I come back, I'll
Yeah.
put it in my little cart or whatever,
Yeah.
and then I'll walk around or whatever. I'll like go peek and see no one's there, and then I'll put
Right.
it back up
Yep.
and then like pretend like I'm going to grab it. I'm like, oh, what is this? And
Yeah.
so just little tips and tricks if you've got
No, hey,
anxiety,
absolutely, right? Sometimes you just gotta
it's
do what you gotta do.
yeah, I feel like we've all been there, done that. You just
Yeah.
have different ways of going about it, but yeah. Yeah.
Nice.
So, I guess what kind of got you involved in Star Wars, or what kind of like started your love of Star Wars, or how were you introduced to it? What was the process?
Sure. So, a couple of, I guess, family members. First, my uncle, he's the youngest, my mom's brother. He's about 10, maybe 11 years older than I am. So he kind of got to see, the original trilogy, right, when he was a kid. And so he was very much into it. So I was the first, I guess, of the grandkids, right? Or his first nephew, right? And he still had a couple of toys, that he had. And so when obviously he was already in, I don't know, middle school, probably high school by this point. He wasn't playing with them or anything like that. So he's like, oh, kind of like, here you go, and this is a cool story, and it's about this dude and this dude. And I'm like, oh, cool. But that was kind of it for me, right? Like, I was super young, so it didn't like necessarily stuck with me. But I always liked the toys. I actually kept the toys, and I think we'll talk about them in a little bit. But the other one was actually one of my cousins on my dad's side. He's 1 year older than I am. But man, he's like an old soul. Ever since probably like 5 or 6 years old, he was all into, first of all, Star Wars. Indiana Jones, I think he was like super into it. Like he got into those like 80s, properties at a very young age, and they always sort of stuck with him. He still collects, he still loves them. Um, but it was with him. I don't know who introduced him, to him. I think he just saw them one day, literally on a rerun on TV, and they just kind of stuck, with him. So, so he was always kind of, the knowledgeable one when it came to those things. But to me specifically, when the special editions come about, you know, back in what is that, 96, 97. I'd seen the toys. Like I said, my cousin had the Power of the Force 2, toys, and they were way better off than we were. So he actually had the Millennium Falcon, and I love that thing. Like that toy was like amazing to me. And even though I didn't know what it was really, right? Like I didn't really know that it was, Han Solo's ship, and like I didn't know anything about it. I just the toy, like really stood out to me with the lights, sound, how big it was, right, for back then. Um, and so it, like I said, they announced, the special editions, and they start sort of putting the old ones on rerun, on TV. So I start catching bits and pieces here and there. So by the time the actual special editions roll out, I'm kind of into it. I'm like, okay, I think I know more or less who Darth Vader is, who Luke is, like that kind of stuff. Fast forward a couple of years, and I get my first, I guess, movie premiere with Episode One, right, back in '99, and that was it. That's what really like just sealed the deal. Like I was already, you know, uh, liking it quite a bit, right? But when Episode One comes out, I lose my mind. I'm like, nope, that's it. Like I'm in it. And Episode Two, Three, of course, come out, and I that I'm more of a prequels kid, really, because of that, right? Like those are the ones that I was around for all the hype and all the rumors, and whatever little pictures you could get here and there, because the internet was like, a million times smaller, and 10 million times slower than it is today. um but yeah, so that's when I knew. I was like, nah, I'm kind of in it. I'm kind of in it for life now.
Yeah, gotcha. So, I mean, I'm definitely a prequels kid too, but I wasn't old enough, I guess, at the time to like go to the movie theater
Right.
and see it. And I know that for around May 4th, it might be like May 3rd or through the 5th or something, but they're actually bringing Phantom Menace
Yes.
back. So it'll be really cool for me at least to have like my first experience watching episode 1 in theaters. I mean, I've watched it a million times
Yeah, of
probably,
course.
but like never in a theater. So I feel like
Nice.
that's going to be a cool experience. Do you think it'll be kind of very nostalgic? Are you going to go see it in theater again,
Oh,
or?
I'm so ready. First of all, and I know you know this, but May 3rd is my birthday. I'm just kidding. You shouldn't know that. But May 3rd is my birthday. So when they announced it, what is it, like a month ago, when they said that Episode 1 is coming back on May 3rd, I was like, that's it. The universe is giving me a gift. I'll take it. So I'm very much excited. I have a boy now, and he's 7, and I can't wait to, he's seen the movies, obviously. Um, not as many times as most people might think. I try not to influence him, like too much. I'm like, hey, you like what you like, and if you don't like the same thing I like, that is 100% fine, right? Like you do not have to like what I like. So some of them are hit more, and some of them hit less with him. So I will rewatch, some episodes here and there. The movies, he's still kind of like hard to sit through all of them. um, but I'm very excited to take it to see him. For him to see the Episode One in theaters. Um, so yeah, I'm very excited about that one. And I know that somebody posted that um, it might not just be Episode One, right? I think the
Yeah.
rest of the prequels might pop up that weekend. I haven't seen anything about it yet, but if it is, oof, sign me up. It's gonna be a marathon kind of weekend. So
Yeah, I think I saw some rumor. It was
yeah,
nothing like super valid, like on like Bespin Bulletin or anything, but it
exactly.
was it was like definitely they were kind of mentioning that they were going to do all three of them, and I was like, oh my gosh, like, this
Yeah.
is my moment, but I mean,
Oh,
for you, the
yeah.
4th was definitely strong. I mean, on your birthday, like, I feel like
Yeah,
that would be the best birthday present ever.
right?
So,
So
that's so crazy.
I told my family, I was like, "Hey, that's it. Cancel any plans you thought you had, for my birthday. No, this is what we're doing, like hands down." I haven't seen the movie tickets pop up, out here yet. So every couple of days I'll check the website and nothing yet. So I'm like, the moment they drop, I gotta buy a few of them. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, very very excited to get to relive that, in theaters. 25 years, which when I read that I had to sit down. I'm not gonna lie, I was like, wow, it's been a while. It has been a while. So kind of took me by surprise. But like I said, yeah. So I'm very much a kid of the prequels as well.
Okay. So, would one of the prequels movies be one of your favorite films, or do you like one of the OTs better?
You know, I've always said it. You can't mess with Empire Strike Back, right? Like that's just kind of sitting on its throne forever, right?
Yep.
Um, but having said that, Revenge of the Sith is the one that was sort of peak, theater experience for me. Because, like I said, by episode one rolls in, I'm still kind of young. I still, don't know much of the lore. I know more or less what I've seen from the original trilogy, but it doesn't really translate right to episode one. It's kind of still removed, right? You don't have Luke, you don't have Vader. Um, you know, to me, it still took a little bit of understanding like why the kid was Vader, right? Um, and of course, the main characters like Darth Maul, Qui Gon Jinn, like those were kind of new. The only more familiar was Obi-Wan, right? But he's still basically a kid, right? Like he's super
Mhm.
young. So yeah, so episode one came in and I enjoyed the movie itself, but like I said, lore wise, I couldn't put too much like together yet. Episode two rolls in and the Clone Wars start, and you're like, all right, this is kind of my jam, right? But by the time episode three is about to hit, I'm all like, I was reading the comic books back then. Um, the Tartakovsky animated shorts, right, or miniseries had come out. And by the way, those are still my favorite Star Wars, like anything really that's been done in animation. I still freaking love those shorts. Um, and so but the thing is that but I was so ready for episode 3, right? Like I had read the rumors, I'd read some of the comic books, like a little bit of the expanded universe. Like I was already very much like into Star Wars, right? And in sort of um different avenues, or like I said, I was a lot more prepared for episode 3. And then it happens, and honestly, I mean, I'm sorry, I don't care what anybody says, but that still has the best lightsaber duel in all the movies, right? Like, I'm sorry that if you disagree, you're wrong. But you can say a lot. There's a lot of wrong with the movie. Don't get me.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's a perfect movie by no means. I'm just saying that the hype for me, right, at that time, and them actually delivering, on screen, it was peak for me. Um, and now, even after years of like Clone Wars and things like that, to me, just it only made it better, right? Like I go back and I'm like, that one clone that's back there, like this and this happened to him, and like, that's Gree, and we know that he did this, and like it just elevated more, the movie. So episode 3 is kind of my thing. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely my thing too. I
Yeah.
totally agree with you. That lightsaber duel on Mustafar, I think
Yeah,
it's like
just
Battle of the Heroes. I'm like
yeah,
terrible with the names of all of them, but I think that was some of the best choreographed,
absolutely.
executed, carried out lightsaber battles that we've ever seen. But it's also to me like the culmination.
Yeah.
You see him grow, you see the things that are leading up to what causes him to
Right.
turn, then you see him turn, and then it
Yeah.
carries into the OT. And, like, I mean, growing up, like, I had to like put the VHS in, so I wasn't like
Right.
super into watching the original trilogy because then you got to
Yeah.
sit there, you got to rewind it. And I was like, you know what? I've watched it. I'm not going to like, whatever.
No, I hear.
But, like, then trying to put the pieces together was always
Yeah.
interesting to me, and then when I talk to people that are a little bit older than me and, like, had the OT first, because I had prequels first,
Sure.
I always find it interesting, like, how you kind of, like, put things together. Because you had OT first, then you start watching prequels, and you're like, "Well, how does this, like, really connect?
Yeah.
Like, who's this young kid?" But I saw it from, like,
The other
him as
way.
a
Yeah.
kid to Vader, so
Yeah.
I always find that very interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I guess you saw it as it was intended, right? In chronological order. But yeah, no, I hear what you're saying. While the prequels were going on, I was definitely rewatching those a lot more than I was the original trilogy even.
Yeah. No, totally. So, okay, good. Favorite movie, we're on the same page. What about
Yeah.
your favorite show? It could be animated, could be live
Oh, okay.
action.
Hmm.
What are your thoughts?
That's a good one. So I feel like people nowadays, their immediate like almost knee jerk reaction is saying Clone Wars, right, for animated.
Mhm.
And don't get me wrong, Clone Wars is amazing, but people, maybe just because I'm older, and I had to, I did go through those seasons like as they were happening, right? So I remember watching that season one, that first episode. I was like, all right, this is great. And then what is it, like two to like six or something like that? I forget right now the count. And I was like, I don't know what I'm watching. Like this is kind of funky. This is kind of weird. Um, it definitely improved and it became its own thing, right? Absolutely. So, um, but let's see, overall show. I don't know. I Rebels. I actually had a hard time getting
Really?
through that first season. It I kind of had to pause it honestly and wait until the season was done, and then I sort of came back and watched it all. Um, but it took, I'm not gonna lie, like it took a little bit for me to get into Rebels. I think it was maybe like mid season two around there when I was like, you know what, okay, I think I know what they're doing. I think I know where this is going. Like this, I see it more coherent now. um and then of course you can't mess with season three, well, and four for that matter. But I don't know. I guess I honestly, I'm gonna go back to it. I kind of have to give it to that Tartakovsky animation. And one, I always liked that style. I was a fan of like Samurai Jack and things like that when he was doing that kind of work. But also, it was the first thing we got Star Wars on TV. By that point in the past like 20 years, right? I think, or yeah, close to that. And there's never really been like, um, how do you call it? Like back then, it was supposed to be like in canon, right? Like within the timeline of the movies. Like it was supposed to be what happened right between episodes two and three. It was meant to fill that gap, so it was like a complementary, right? It was a piece of the puzzle for the main story. And again, that we've had droids and we've had Ewoks and stuff like that, right? But those, I don't feel that they were, how can I say it? They were not necessarily meant to be, a an addition to the main story. Like they were more like adjacent, a little bit sort of on their own thing, right? But these ones, they were specifically designed, right, to introduce some of the characters, some of the conflicts, things like Grievous and that you would get to see later on in live action. So to me, that always blew my mind, how we were finally getting sort of like a, not necessarily an expanded universe, but more of like an in between, right? Like an in between episodes in animated form. So yeah, I'm gonna have to give it to the Tartakovsky Clone Wars.
Okay. What about, like, live action, or is that just, like, your overall, like, favorite show?
So if I had to pick one, I'll probably go with that one. Animation for sure. Live action, man, live action is tough.
Yeah,
Up to season one and two, I would have said Mandalorian, like almost hands down. Um, yeah, that third season kind of took us for a ride.
yeah.
But I guess overall, if you still average it out, right, 3 seasons, and two of them are really really good. So I guess it still comes out on top. Uh, Andor, I know, was kind of divisive, right? There was almost like no middle lane for that show. You
Yeah.
either loved it or hate it, right? And maybe hate is a strong word, but you disliked it. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it more than I thought. I agree. We could have cut maybe like 3 episodes out of there, and it would have been uh, objectively better maybe. But yeah. So overall, live action, I guess, yeah, I have to give it to The Mandalorian just because they started it first of all, right? They didn't know where it was going, so they tried their best from the beginning, right? They're like, hey, if we're only gonna get one season, it's gonna be a damn good season, right? Um, and then that season finale, right? Season two, sorry, finale. It's just it was like a nuclear bomb going off, like it was just people are still talking about it, right? So yeah, I think live action, it's probably gonna have to be The Mandalorian.
Okay. Yeah, I totally agree. I think season 1 and 2 were absolutely amazing, and
Yeah,
then that season 2 finale, like, totally
yeah.
blew me away. I think it blew a lot of us
Oh
away,
yeah,
and then we, like, went in super excited, we have a season 3, and then it was just such a mixed bag. I mean, don't get me wrong,
yeah.
there were things I absolutely loved about it,
Oh,
both
same. Yeah,
flashback scenes and stuff, but I just overall there was, like, things like Jack Black, Lizzo,
yeah,
like, I love Jack Black and Lizzo, but in
yeah.
Star
Just maybe
Wars?
not in Star Wars. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah, no, I agree completely. Yeah, it's kind of funky, right? How like how good they had, season one, how somehow they improved it for season two, right? And then season three, we just went off into the woods. Like I
Yeah,
still don't fully know what happened there, but again, a lot of really good things. They added some stuff to the mythos, right, of like the Mandalorian,
yeah,
lore and history, and they cleared up some things, and they addressed some things, and I was like, hey, I'm all for that, but kind of like, where is this going, right? Like that was the thing. I was like, I absolutely loved the action. Like the action was amazing.
mhm,
Visually, it looks insane. Like it looks so good. But I'm like, okay, but why? Like, why is all of this sort of going on, right? Like, you kind of have to give me a story to go along with the fights, and with the blowing up ships and all that stuff. Like, at the end of it all, we still need a good story to sort of tie it all down and be like, hey, this is why, right? Like, this is where we're going. Um, that kind of stuff. So, me personally, I felt that was not nearly as present as it was before, right?
yeah,
In the show. So we'll see if apparently if we get a season four. That seems to be a question. We're gonna get a movie, so I'm wondering if they're gonna try and wrap it all up in neatly into a bow. Uh, but yeah, we'll see. Don't get me wrong. I'm excited to get Star Wars in theaters, because the fact that we haven't had anything new in, what is it now, 5 years or so, 4 years,
yeah, I think
uh,
2019 was the
2019. Yeah,
last around 2019, so yeah, 4 or
yeah,
5 years.
yeah.
Yeah.
It feels kind of criminal, honestly. Like it
Oh,
feels like
it's
we,
yeah,
yeah,
it's offensive, I mean, I just feel like we go such long periods without movies,
yeah,
which is, like, super tough, but yeah, that was gonna be my next question is I know they're supposed to be doing the movie, that's
yeah,
confirmed. The season 4's definitely up in the air. I don't
yeah.
know if they're gonna do that, they're not gonna do that. But yeah, I mean, I'm wondering if that's gonna be the end, like, if they're just gonna do the
Right.
movie or if it's kind of just gonna be a standalone, like,
Yeah.
maybe it doesn't even connect to the first 3 seasons, like, it's just its own thing.
Yeah, and it's
So,
funny you say that, because I was thinking about that the other day. I was like, what if it's just like an extended version of an episode, right? Like,
yeah,
Mando gets a bounty and he goes off, and that bounty gets complicated. He loses Grogu, right, or gets captured again or something like that, and he has to go back and rescue him. And then that's kind of it, like there's no um there's no fighting Thrawn, or there's no bringing back Ahsoka, or there's no, hey, Luke and Ezra, I need both of y'all Boba Fett thrown in for good mix. Like, what if there's none of that? So it's funny you
Yeah.
mentioned that because I was thinking about it not that long ago. I'm like, maybe it won't be as big as we think it will be. Again, in the sense of uh, the story, right? Like trying to encompass everybody. But at the same time, if you're not gonna do a season 4 of Mandalorian, right? You kind of gotta give us, you kind of have to wrap up some stuff, right? Like you can't just let it, float around like that. Um, but yeah, it's interesting that it's even a question, I guess, that there's gonna be a fourth season. Just I guess just the state of things, right? Just sort of like the influx things of how Disney's handling the property, but we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, season 3 definitely left me with, like, a lot of questions, but, the last episode, how they kind of ended it, they really kind of put, like, a nice bow on it, Mando and Grogu's playing with his frogs, they're at this
Yeah.
cottage, like, a nice picture, so I'm almost like, you could kinda just not do a season 4,
Right.
but then there's some questions that aren't being answered. Like,
Yeah.
I really thought they were gonna do something with the mythosaur. Like, you showed it
Same.
and then did nothing with it, so I thought that was, like, crazy. But yeah, I don't know, I mean, everyone's been saying the Mando movie is supposed to kind of pull everything together and wrap
Yeah.
up, everything, but then I'm almost kind of like, well, I don't wanna, like, get my hopes up and think it's gonna be Boba Fett and Mando and Ahsoka all in
Yeah.
one, like an
Exactly.
heir to the empire kind of thing, but
Right.
I don't know. I don't know what to expect from Disney.
Yeah, I don't know anymore. It's same thing, right? We know that Ahsoka season 2 is, more than likely going to happen, right? Like they've
Right.
said it's going to happen. I don't see them canceling that one. But I'm like, okay, when is all of this going to happen, right? Like, what's sort of like the timeline? Because the Mando movie is about to start shooting supposedly this year, in the summer, if I remember correctly. So I'm sure they're shooting for like a couple of years, for it to come out. Season 2 of Ahsoka hasn't started filming, so I'm like, well, those also take a couple of years at least, right, to sort of prepare. So I'm like, where are we sort of falling, in the timeline? Like, Mando movie comes first, Ahsoka second. Are they gonna try to rush Ahsoka so that they can wrap it up in the movie, with Mando? Like, so it's kind of those things that I'm like, I don't think we should have so much guesswork, like this far into the game. But it seems like there's more and more unknowns every time, like every year, with the property. So yeah, so we'll see. I just at this point I'm I'm just hoping for a good story, right? Like that's kind of like, whenever they arrive, okay, if it's sooner, if it's later, but just give me a good story now.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely I feel like a lot of things that are like up in the air. There is no set schedule. Like, I mean, we're already kind of we're almost like I would say 1/4 of the way through this
Yep.
year already, and we've really only got confirmation of Bad Batch,
Yep.
When are these other shows like Skeleton Crew and Acolyte? When are those supposed to be dropping? We've got the
Exactly.
Ray movie, apparently Rogue Squadron's back in the mix.
Yeah, I saw that.
Like, there's just so many, like, random things, like and then we were supposed to get the Acolyte trailer during the Super Bowl,
Oh
and
yeah,
then
and then
now
it
it's
just
supposed to be, with the Phantom Menace, like, a
yeah,
trailer, and I'm just like, there's so many unknowns, and, like, I don't want them to rush anything because I want it to be, you know, quality over quantity, but I
sure,
would just,
yeah,
give us, like, a little something to look forward to, like, "Hey, we're gonna
yeah.
have something drop in July,"
Yeah,
just give
no, I
us
agree.
something.
It's like I said, with things like Acolyte or Skeleton Crew, I'm like, dude, those were wrapped up a while ago, like months and months ago. And I understand, the strike happened, all that, and that threw a wrench in everybody's timing. But as soon as those were done, like everybody, literally, like the next day, they started announcing, "Oh, Marvel, we got this, we got that. In a year, we're gonna do this." Like everybody was just sort of ready, and just boom, boom, boom. Here it is. Here's the schedule now, right? Taking into account the months that we lost for the strike and all that, and Star Wars was just radio silence, for months. Really, it took like 2 months. Then they'll say, "Oh yeah, we're gonna give you Bad Batch," right? I'm like, okay, but where's the other stuff? Like, where's the other 2 or 3 shows that you told me were done, right? And they were supposed to drop last year, and now we don't even know if it's gonna happen this year. Like, what's going on with that? like Andor season 2, right? They're like, oh yeah, no, it's happening, and they're like, oh yeah, you know what? By the way, we're gonna push it a year. I'm like, why? Why? Like it,
Yeah.
you know?
But I thought they were
Uh,
done filming
yeah,
Andor season 2, like, I thought they wrapped that up and,
yeah.
like, I know there's post things that need to be done,
Oh,
like
absolutely. Right.
post-production, things like that, but I don't know, like, to push it off a couple years
Yeah.
seems, like, wild, but, yeah, I don't know, there's definitely a lot of unknowns and, like, people like, we haven't even really gotten, like, an official trailer, like, people at Celebration got to
Yep.
see sneak peeks of,
Oh yeah.
I think, Acolyte, I believe, Skeleton Crew,
Right. Yes.
don't quote me, but, like, we haven't the general public who didn't attend, Celebration hasn't seen anything, like, why is there no trailers or anything kind of floating around? There's, like, nothing.
Yeah, and mind you,
So,
that's gonna be what that was almost a year ago, right?
yeah.
Celebration
I
in
think
Europe.
February sometime or
Yeah,
February or March, so yeah,
yeah,
about a
somewhere around there.
year
But it's
ago.
yeah, so that's what I'm saying. Like to your point, I'm like, okay, that's fine. You give them the sneak peek. I'm all about that for sure. But hey, here we are a year later, and you can't even tell me when a trailer is gonna happen, let alone show me one. Like that's it's kind of weird.
Yeah, it's definitely odd. I mean, I was hoping for more. I know the strike and everything, I know that totally threw a wrench in a lot of things,
Yeah,
but I feel like, we're at the point where the gears should be pumping, things should be moving again, like, what's coming next? Because I mean, Bad Batch is gonna be done soon, we're about halfway through that,
yeah,
and I think, that's gonna end beginning of May, like, the first
yeah. May
Wednesday
1st.
of
Yeah,
May. So what's after that, you know?
right.
Like, there's just so much like, I feel like we're already getting so far into 2024 for all the projects that are supposed to be coming, and there's nothing other than Bad Batch that's confirmed. So,
Agreed.
I don't know, it's tough. But I guess my last question before we look at your collection
Sure.
is who is your favorite Star Wars character?
So hint, hint. Um, it's Obi-Wan Kenobi,
Okay.
and we okay. So he's definitely one of the main characters, right? He has been from the beginning, but I feel for me, again, being a prequels kid, right? I got to see him sort of evolve right into the Jedi Master that he is, and then the Clone Wars happened, and it just gave me a lot more insight, and the Kenobi show happened finally, I guess. And don't get me wrong, it's not perfect, right? We know that. But in terms of the lore and in terms of the character, like I fell in love with it. I love that show. I'm probably one of the few ones that actually goes back and rewatches it every so often. But it just kind of like the way I look at it is the more and more I learn about the character, the more and more I like it, right? Like the more um, this is a man that literally lost everything, right? Uh, Friends, family, the Jedi Order, his brother, right? Brother, Padawan, confidant, whatever, like partner in adventures, all of that, right? He lost his republic, right? He lost, the thing that he served, that he believed in. He lost his I don't know what to call it, but his love interest, right?
Yeah, Satine.
Duchess, right, at the end, at the hands of somebody he should have eliminated, right? Like he thought he had eliminated, and in that same episode, right? Like he tries to show more like like empathy, like be like, hey man, I know it's not your fault, right? Like you weren't born evil, like you were sort of twisted, right, and like manipulated, right, to become evil, but he can't quite uh get it right, I guess, or portray his feelings, and Maul just gets even angrier, right, and he kills Satine, and at that point, like I'm like, dude, this dude is taking a beating, right, and yet we see him completely broken in the show, in Obi-Wan series, and yet he never really gave into the dark side, like um he never really gave up, right? Even though to his eyes, right, he had literally nothing left, right? And I don't know, like that always sort of resonated with me because I'm like, okay, and also to be kind of fair, if Anakin would not have been, sort of present or existing in the Jedi Order, I kind of feel that Obi-Wan would have been like, like the MVP, right, of that generation, right, of Jedi's or new Jedi Masters. I always thought he was fairly powerful, skilled. Of course, he followed, the rules as best as he could. And so I always thought that he was kind of like the, I don't want to say the perfect Jedi, but sort of like the poster boy, right, for like what a Jedi was meant to be, right, at least at that time. And like I said, just the fact that he lost everything around him, that gave him sort of his identity, right, like gave him purpose, gave him, drove him to do the right thing. And they took all of that away, and yet he still, continues to do the right thing, right, without anybody telling him or demanding it of him. So I don't know, that always sort of got me, that always sort of like, I'm like, man, like that's kind of nuts, that's kind of, it's like a particular uh a flavor of crazy, right, that to be so like, hey, this is my path. And even though everything around it is falling apart, like I'm sticking to it, regardless of anything. So like I said, I don't know exactly when, or I couldn't tell you, oh, it's when I watched, episode 2 or something like that. Like it just kind of sort of built up, in me. And one day I was like, you know what, he kind of is my favorite character. Like he's, like I just really like the all the lore, all the mythos behind him. And like I said, of course his portrayal, McGregor, is amazing, right? Like
Yeah.
he's a freaking I was gonna say national treasure, but he's not necessarily American. So a world treasure, let's say. So uh actor wise, right, he's amazing. But like I said, character wise, that's why he's always been sort of my favorite. That's why I took the name for the channel. um and even though he's not the flashiest for sure, right, or even the coolest, like the way he looks and stuff, um again, to me, it's sort of like the what he represents, right, sort of
Mhm.
what he represents. That's what always kind of resonated with me.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I totally get it. I mean, Obi has always, I feel like, been on the straight and narrow,
Yeah.
and Anakin has always wavered from that path, you
Right.
know? So, I mean, Anakin was always my favorite character growing up, and then I started watching Clone Wars, and I fell in love with Ahsoka. I feel like just having a female Jedi who was, like, kind of similar in age to me, like, at the time, like,
Of
teens,
course. Yeah.
kinda just going through the trials and tribulations of
Right.
everyday life, obviously different, she's fighting battles and I'm doing homework. So, but I
Yeah, but
mean, it was just really
but
cool.
the theme is there, right? It's all
Yeah.
about, sort of what responsibilities you have and what some expectations are being put on you, right? And so that's gonna be the same, like you said, if you gotta finish homework or if you gotta fight, some battle droids, right? Like the underlying, tones, and sometimes even the how do you call it, the situation, right? Like it's kind of the same thing, right? If you think about it. So I totally see that. um Anakin for me was always funner, right? Like he was super fun. He was so powerful. He would always have the best jokes. Like he'd just come out lightsaber swinging with 1,000 clones behind him. So it was always a lot more fun or enjoyable to like watch, right? Um, then once Ahsoka started more coming into her own, right? Like a little bit more defined as a character, of course, and within the show, same thing, right? Because she wasn't necessarily as reckless, right, as Anakin was. Like, so it was always kind of funny to see the dynamic of like, how is it that teenage, girl, right, is the voice of reason in this like interaction, right? Like, how is
Mhm.
she the one telling you, hey, be careful, and not sort of like the other way around? So that was always interesting to me. But no, I totally get it. Like I said, it's it's the beauty of Clone Wars, I guess, that just gave us such a deeper, look into some characters we thought we knew, some we definitely didn't know, right? I mean, Ahsoka was brand new, and and some even some villains, right? Like Maul. I mean,
Yeah, definitely a
Maul.
deeper look at
Yeah,
him.
yeah. I don't know that there's been more character development, uh, in Star Wars than that, right? Or maybe I should say unexpected character development, right?
Yeah,
Like nobody really thought he was gonna come back, and if he came back, everybody thought like, oh, 2 3 episodes and he's out again, right? Or something like that. And yet, they kept developing to such a point that by the time he gets to that battle with Ahsoka, right, on Mandalore, like
yeah,
you're so invested in both of them that you're like, oh man, like I know how both of y'all got here, right? And to me, at least, I'm like, of course, Maul is evil, but at the same time, I'm like, I kind of get what you're doing. What you're doing, like you were discarded, you were abandoned, you were almost killed, like all of that. Like, what else could he had done, right? There was almost like no other path for him. Um, so yeah, that's kind of like the beauty, right, with those two characters, in my eyes of Clone Wars, like that we would never have gotten that, otherwise. So
yeah,
I get that. I mean, I think that's why a lot of people definitely choose Ahsoka, right, as their favorite character, and rightfully so. Like I said, it's one of the few characters we've seen from inception, right, from creation, pretty much to to what it is now, which is people almost can't think about Star Wars without thinking about her, right? Like she's
yeah,
become synonymous with the saga, really.
100%. So, I mean, I know that Ewan, he's phenomenal as
Yeah.
Obi. What were your thoughts on how James Arnold Taylor and the writing of the Clone Wars animated Obi-Wan? Like, did that help kind of further your love for Obi? Did it make you kind of look at him differently? Like, what were your thoughts on that?
Yeah, definitely. So first of all, I think he did a great job, almost from the get-go, honestly.
Yeah.
Um, Obi-Wan, like he definitely was, like you said, right? He was kind of like always the straight arrow, right, type of guy, and he's like the one complaining that Anakin is doing whatever he wants to do. Um, and that's true, right? Like I didn't really bump into that as the wrong portrayal. But as the episodes progress, right, we start seeing a little bit more of him, right? Like that, he gets where his place is in the dynamic, right? He's like, hey, I I'm the one who just kind of lets loose, Anakin, but then I'm always there to back him up, right? It's like that is my responsibility. Like I'm always there to catch him if he fails, right? Like I'm always there to guide him if he's feeling, frustrated and all that stuff. Which that was kind of his role with Luke, right? When we first saw him. Um, so to me, the thing that I always loved about Clone Wars is how sort of like sarcastic he was too, like sort of his little, passive aggressive comments, even like
Mhm.
sometimes. I always sort of enjoyed those, and there's so my favorite episode in Clone Wars is season 2, episode 5, landing at Point Rain. That's when they go back to retake Geonosis, right? They took it during episode 2, they lost it, right? And now they're on their way back to retake it once again. And dude, that episode is like I can rewatch that episode like constantly. Um, Only thing I wish is that it would have been later in the show so that the animation was a little bit more polished than it is. But man, that episode has Obi-Wan, crash land. He's hurt. He's literally bleeding, like he's got a cut, like a gash across his face. And I don't know that we ever saw that again, really. So that episode like surprised the hell out of me when I saw it, and I'm like, dude, this is like the fifth episode in the second season. Like, why is it so damn good? Like, I never, I could never sort of get over that. Um, and there's a scene in there, when Obi-Wan's not even fighting. He's literally down because he's so hurt. The clones are, sort of forming like a circle, right? Like a perimeter around him, but they're just getting, hammered by the droids. And they're falling, left and right. There's only a handful left. And one of them comes over to Obi-Wan and says, hey, they're about to break through, right? Like that's kind of like saying, hey, we're done, right? And so Obi-Wan just kind of weakly, gets up as best he can. he just draws his lightsaber, and you can see in his face like, all right, that's it. I'm out. And of course, the bombers show up and they save him and all that. But to me, I don't know that I ever really got to see that again, in the show. So I was like, dang, like that hit me, like that episode. Like I said, is my favorite one because I'm like, they went for it when they didn't need to, and so early in the show, so early in the season, all of that. And I love that they used Obi-Wan for that, right? Because again, one, my favorite character, but two, he would have been like that, he would have been like, no, you know what, we're gonna hold off until we cannot, because we got a mission, we gotta get to the objective, we gotta push through, like that's just, that's our responsibility. Otherwise, the other Jedi that are attacking, they're not gonna, be able to, whatever, I forget what they were gonna do, I think like destroy a factory or something like that, right? And I'm like, yeah, that's totally Obi-Wan, like that's definitely what he would do. So big credit to James Arnold Taylor. He, not just in the voice, of course, which was great in my opinion, um, but just the way he owned the character, right? His portrayal, and of course, it has to be said, the way Dave Filoni handled the character, right? Well, let's say Dave Filoni and George Lucas back then, still, right? Um, but yeah, I'm always grateful to the Clone Wars because they sort of gave us that depth of getting to know, right, the character in a lot of different situations.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I think that's why I enjoyed the Clone Wars so much. I mean, season 7 I think is a standalone by
Oh yeah,
itself. Like that is just a masterpiece. But I feel like you get to see, a lot of the trials and tribulations of these characters that you don't get to see in the movies. Like obviously
agreed.
there's, big gaps in between, and then
Yeah,
you kind of see what happens after Attack of the Clones, and then pretty much leads right up to Revenge of the Sith,
yeah.
and like some of the things that are occurring. And I feel like it was really cool. I think Matt Lantern did a phenomenal job kind of expanding Anakin's character. I think James Arnold Taylor did a great job, expanding Obi-Wan. I mean, of course, it's with George Lucas and Dave Filoni's writing, but I feel like they just like really own the character, and it
Oh
was
yeah,
cool to see so much development and so much more that you don't get to see in the movies.
exactly.
So I loved it. The Clone Wars was definitely phenomenal, and then season 7 just blew me away.
Yeah,
That was a masterpiece.
and especially because we thought we were never gonna get him, right? So
Yeah. So you did send me some pictures of your
yeah.
collection. So I think
All
this is the
right.
first one. Yeah, so walk me through it. What do we have
Yeah,
here?
sure. Fair enough with the banger right there. But so this is what I like to call the toy closet. So here in the bunker, I have, what you see here, right? And my sort of like my rule is here in the room, right? It's all Star Wars, right? It's but and just Star Wars. But I'm a toy guy, so there are a couple other things that I like, that are not Star Wars, sort of related, or yeah, they're just not Star Wars, right? So luckily, this room came with this closet that you see here, and the previous owners already had all those shelves put up
Oh, wow.
when we bought the house last year. And so in my mind, I was like, that's perfect for me. So we repainted. And the color scheme was chosen by my wife, and I think she did a great job at it because she painted she chose the paint for the walls to be darker, and then just that bright red, on the shelves just kind of pops. Uh, so I really like the way it came out. And so in here, I kind of try and fail miserably, but I try to contain sort of like my other fandoms, right? So we got a hodgepodge of stuff here that um so the ones that I like to point out to is right there in the middle, underneath the Spider-Man, I guess, picture or paint. Those few toys that you see there, there's some Marvel, there's some He-Man, Transformers, there's a little sort of tank for the turtles. Those are actually my childhood toys,
Oh,
those
wow.
I've had since literally, I mean, I don't know exactly when for most of them, but probably since I was like 6 7 years old, right? So those kind of been with me literally, all my life. So that's why I finally decided to display some of them. Actually, there's you can't really see them there, but there's a couple of little like Playmobil um I think they're like farmers or something like that. There's two figures there. Those were given to me on my first birthday. So
Oh
on
wow.
yeah, so they were a birthday present when I turned one. So those I believe are, take the cake for the longest, or the toys that I've had the longest. And then a lot of modern stuff, of course. I like Battlestar Galactica, I like Godzilla, I like, anime stuff, I like Marvel, as I said, I like gargoyles. So it's a little bit of everything in there, and so far I've been okay in sort of containing it there. But I have a lot more stuff in storage that I'm sure it's probably just gonna fill that room. But again, that's kind of like the idea behind this display, or this, like I said, this toy closet, is to sort of still showcase some of the other stuff that I like or that I love. That's, for the most part, at least, not Star Wars. If you notice, I still have a few Star Wars items just because
Yeah.
I got too much stuff, honestly. So it just kind of, still spills in there. But yeah, that's what this is.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I was gonna say I do see some Star Wars stuff in there, but
Yeah,
no, I love the color scheme. I like the
thanks.
shelves. I think if I had a spare room and like kind of just my collection room and it had a closet, I would totally do something like this. I mean, it might be for like some of my boxes and stuff,
Yeah,
but I
and
think
it's
it's a great
funny.
idea.
It's funny you say that because I thought about it too. Don't get me wrong. I still have plenty of boxes. You know what I found it to be an issue of late, and again, and I know it sounds kind of maybe even dumb. Protectors. The clamshell protectors. For
Mhm.
your figures, like the ones that I got for these guys for the vintage collection. When I'm not using them, or I'm not using them yet, I'm like, okay, where am I putting the boxes? Because they still take up space.
Yeah.
So I'm like, it's just one of those things that I'm like, I know I'm gonna need them eventually, right? But in the meantime, they're kind of just taking up space. So some of them are in another room actually here in the house, but most of them are not in the garage, because I was like, you know what, I can't. Like, I already have so much stuff here that. But I know that soon enough, I'm gonna be like, okay, I got 5 or 10 new figures. Now I need to put him into protectors, and I have to get up there and try to bring him down and all of that stuff. So yeah, it's just kind of, space is the collector's number one enemy. So
That's exactly what I say. It's so tough.
yeah,
There's only so many things you can put in certain places and so many
yeah.
ways you can get creative with how you're gonna display your stuff. Like, I think there's just never enough room, and maybe I just have a problem collecting,
Well, I
but,
think I think I
I
got the exact same problem because
yeah, I mean, I'm fine with it, but yeah, I think space is tough, but yeah, I mean, I know that you don't collect Funkos as
Mhm.
much, but there's certain, like, hard stack protectors,
Oh yeah,
like, I don't even know where to put them
yeah,
sometimes, like, I've got most of the time I try to find pops to put them in, but, if you batch order them, it's cheaper than buying, like, a
exactly. That's what I
singular
was gonna
one,
say. Yeah,
so now I've just got these, like and it's not like they can fold or anything,
no,
like, they're just hard pieces
no,
of
yeah,
plastic, I'm like, "Dude, where am I gonna put these?" Like, I'm already so, like, struggling for space.
exactly. Yeah,
So I totally get the, protector
yeah.
problem.
Yeah, and
It's
it's
tough.
funny you say that because I actually have a few acrylic ones, right? Like harder plastic shelves like that, and that's exactly right. There's no collapsing them. There's no
Yep.
uh, putting them together. If you have two or more, like it's just they take up the exact same amount of space. So and I'm totally with you. Like I'll order 10 sometimes, just because it's cheaper, and I'll get free shipping. So and I know eventually I'm gonna use them. It's
Mhm.
just, but in the meantime, maybe I use 4 and now I got 6 that I gotta worry about somewhere to put.
Yep.
No, I totally get that. I hear you.
Yeah, 100%. And then you sent me these pictures.
Ah, yeah.
Yeah, let
So
me know.
out of this ones, the ones that I wanted to point out is, you see that Luke and that very yellow mini rig on the, what is that? I guess middle down portion, um, in the acrylic case, right? So that Luke and that little mini rig, the super yellow one, those were the toys that my uncle gave to me when I was a kid.
Mhm.
I must have been like 5 or 6. And so, if you want to get technical, those are Lily Letty. So they are Mexican produced items. Again, back in the 80s, and I So the I played with them as toys because when I was a kid, I was really into GI Joes, the 3.75 ones. So to me, Luke was a GI Joe that couldn't move quite right, because I just didn't have the articulation for it. And that little mini rig I used as a GI Joe vehicle. So those two were integrated into my, like I said, in sort of into my GI Joe playtime. But that Luke one day when I was a kid, playing with it in the front yard of the house, it fell. So the house, or I guess the what do you call it, the fence wasn't finished. So it was only the base, but they were the what are they called, the cinder blocks, the cinder blocks that have like orifices, right, for you to pour like concrete
Mhm.
inside. The point is that he fell into one of those, right? But it was already a stack of three or four, I forget, because we were building right from the bottom up, but they weren't done because my parents sort of ran out of money for a little bit, and so the build kind of stopped. Anyway, the point is that that thing fell, and it just went like through the different cinder blocks all the way to the bottom. So I couldn't reach it. Obviously, my dad, tried to rig something to get it out. It just didn't happen. So I was like devastated, right? And he ended up staying there. Anyway, fast forward like I want to say maybe like 10 to 12 years. I'm in college, right? So I no longer live in that house. I'm in college, and then my mom decides to renovate that portion of the house. So they knocked down that that piece of the fence, right, of the construction. And so one day they came over to visit where I was in school, and we were having lunch or dinner, whatever. And so my mom's telling me how the renovation's going. She's like, "Yeah, we finally knocked down the fence, so we're gonna close it off and blah." And I was like, "The fence where my Luke fell in?" And she's like, "Oh my god!" She's like, "I totally forgot about it." And I was like, "Did somebody see it?" Like, you know. And she's like, "I don't know." So she literally called the I guess the construction guy that was doing the work, and he's like, "Hey, I'm sorry to call you so late, but by any chance, when you knocked down this thing yesterday, did you happen to see a toy?" It would have been and he describes the look, right? And he's like, "You know what? I think we did see something, but since we're like, oh, she doesn't have any kids, so it must not be her, so we just chucked it all away." And she's like, "Go get it." She's like, "I don't know where you dumped it, but please, like, drive over there and go get it." So, really long story short, I got my look back like 12 years later.
Wow.
So that is why he's so dirty. He's so like dusty because he was in there for years. And so when I got it back, I was like, you know what? I'm not gonna clean him. I'm not gonna clean him because it's kind of part of the story now. Like it's part of the of what gives it character. So yeah, it's one of my favorite stories to tell. I've told it ad nauseum. Sorry, but yeah, that's why I keep those the way they are, because I've had him for, again, pretty much all my life, and those were my first officially, right, my first Star Wars toys. So
Yeah.
and that look came back to me. Um, and the rest of the stuff, I guess, to the right, you see, and I think we all share the love for the clone troopers now, especially us prequel kids. So few multi-packs in there, few of the deluxe what do they call it, like dark skies collection, sorry, for Clone Wars. And one of my favorite multi-packs is right there in the middle, which is all the clone trooper types for the Battlefront 2 video
Nice.
game, the old one, the one that just re-released like last week.
Mhm.
Those are the different types that you could choose when playing the game. So I absolutely love that multi-pack. All the way to the bottom, we got the Clone Commandos, which were, merchandise was very scarce back then for Delta Squad. Now we kind of see them more often, right, in Clone Wars, and in, well, now technically in Bad Batch. Um, so yeah, that's a little bit of my clone, setup. And if you notice on that top shelf, I do have those BD pops that we talked about. What was that, last week, I guess? On
Yeah, I think a week,
Yeah,
week or
yeah,
two
about a
ago.
week ago, right? On the podcast, as I said, I don't really collect Funko Pops, but those BD pops are getting to me. Like I've really come
Mhm.
to like them, so I'm a little bit afraid now. But yeah, and so yeah, that's like I said, I wanted to tell the story because that's one of my favorite collectibles. That Luke, and I'm sad to say I don't have him, like complete, with the robe and the lightsaber and stuff. They're kind of expensive, the vintage ones. So, it's just one of those things that one day I'm just gonna say, all right, you know what, I have to bite the bullet, spend the money, and get a good, example of it complete. But for now, like I said, that's one of my most treasured, right, in my collection, just because of the story behind it.
No, I mean, that Luke has lived a long
Yeah.
life.
Oh
I
yeah.
mean, that's like I mean, at least he found his way, back to
Hmm.
you eventually,
It's
but
so
that's
yeah.
great. I probably would have forgotten about it, honestly. I can't believe that you, like, remembered that he was still down there
Yeah.
and, it was cool that they kinda went back and got it for you,
And
so,
got him.
I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah. So
it's a
they had
phenomenal
already,
story.
yeah, they had already taken the what would you call, I guess, like the rubble, right? When
Mhm.
they tore down that portion, they had already, put it into a truck and taken it to, whatever dumping ground they had, right? Or yeah, whatever landfill, I'm not sure. So they literally had to go back and like find it. So yeah, no, that Luke has been through quite a bit. So
Yeah, I mean, that's cool, and then, yeah, I was gonna ask about the Bitty Pops if you weren't gonna bring them up, but
yeah,
as I
I
saw
thought
them, I was like,
I
"I
thought
see those."
yeah, I was gonna say so you know that I wasn't lying to you guys. I do have a few of those. So
Yeah. I mean, they're great. They're, like, tiny little
oh,
pops. They have a lot of detail to them,
they
like,
do.
for being as small as they are, and,
And
they
you know
come with
what,
a little
I'm ashamed to say, I just recently noticed that you can just pop him off, right? You
Mhm.
can pop him off and see the actual um, pop, right, or the figure inside, right, without the heart
Yeah,
shell, right, and then you can pop him right back on. I was like, dude, this is awesome. Like this is,
yeah,
I don't know, yeah. And as you can see, I really like the miniature stuff, so I got a few Clone Wars stuff in there too, but yeah, so that's why they're getting to me. So I'm
yeah.
a little bit afraid now.
Eh, don't be afraid. They're tiny. They're
Yeah,
bitty.
until
But
I have
pops
200, and then yeah,
yeah. And then I see you've got some minifigs. You are
yeah.
an army builder. I see.
So um, so the reason why I showed this one is because man, it must have been like 2 years ago by now. I bought a pack of these guys, right? So I bought all of those, but they all came disassembled, like legs, hands,
Oh, yeah.
arms, like everything was disassembled. They got removable helmets. So the helmet was, one thing, but the head was also removed. So anyway, they were completely disassembled, and I was like, oh man, like that's gonna take a while to put together. Um. Anyway, so I had them in a box, or in a bag, I mean, and then we moved here, and I found it. I was like, you know what, I'm gonna finally put them together, right? I didn't. I did not put a single one together. But then fast forward to this Valentine that just passed, I guess a month ago, right? Valentine's Day. My son actually took it upon himself to piece them all together, and he did it in secret, right? He wanted it to be a surprise for me, which it was, and it wasn't, because I noticed that the bag was missing, like a couple days before. So I was like, okay, but I was like, whatever. And so he gifted me, for Valentine's, he gave me all of this assembled, as a gift. And so I was like, okay, now it's time to display them, right? So I just kind of put them into a little pose and put them all together there. So that's why I wanted to show that one. So he's proud that we showed
Yeah.
his work.
No, absolutely. I mean, that's cool of him, like, to do that for you. It's a little
Oh yeah,
gesture. Hey,
absolutely.
shout out to your son.
Yeah, yeah,
And then this seems like where
yeah,
it's at.
yeah. So again, when we decided to buy this house and all that, of course I claimed this room for me, uh, and I was like, you know what, I really want to think about how to sort of display, right, the stuff. Um, and this is kind of like the first wall that I came up with. I knew I wanted to do like a 3.75 wall, right? Let's just call it that. But I was like, okay, well, kind of like the layout, it's also sort of my background, right? When I'm streaming, like right now.
Mhm.
So I kind of wanted to make it, good, like look good. Um, so anyway, so those shelves, I think those were the first ones that we put in here, and it was a challenge because technically that's two shelves per level, so it's four different shelves that I had to line up, correctly so that they would sort of be flush with each other. That didn't happen because it was basically just me. So I'm there trying to hold this thing that's like 3.5 feet or whatever against the wall, keep it level, drill right at the same time, and then sort of like attached to the wall. And yeah, no, it took a long time. That's it was kind of frustrating. I'm not gonna lie. So I'm a little bit proud that they, came out not as bad as they could have. So they look okay. And I was like, you know what? Here's where we're gonna put, some of the vintage carded stuff, like vintage, right? Like 70s and 80s. And then I started getting a little bit more into the autographs. Actually, some of the events that I went to and stuff like that in the last couple of years. So that's what I put here too. And then around it, I was like, you know what? Flat out, I don't have enough space to put all of my 3.75, carded stuff. Like that's just not gonna happen. So what I sort of thought about is like, okay, I will put them or display them in a way that I can just swap out, for other pieces, and sort of remain like the layout remains. So so that's what I was talking about when I said I bought a bunch of protectors, and I put some of them were already in protectors, but most of them were not. So I put a bunch of those figures into those protectors, right? Because they're all the same size. So that way, when I want to switch out a row or all of them, if I end up doing that, right, they're all gonna be sort of the same layout because they're spaced out to the protectors themselves, right? Not so much the figures. As you know, some figures have different cards and some of them have weird cutouts and stuff like that. So that was kind of like my reasoning behind it. And then the ships just kind of happened, honestly. I kept pulling some from storage, and I just kept putting them in there and stacking them up. And I was like, you know what? I know it's messed up, but I kind of like the way it looks, like like a wall of ships.
Yeah,
And I didn't take a good enough picture, but the bottom row of that is basically all ATATs, right?
nice.
The different versions, of course. I don't have multiples of the same, but I think I have, what is it, four, maybe five. So kind of like the from the Power of the Force 2 on, like the vintage collection and stuff. I think I got most of them now. Uh, Most of the AT-AT. So they're the big box. So that's they they go at the bottom.
Yeah, I mean, you gotta have a good base to start with.
All right. Yeah.
But so the ones that are on the shelf, are
Mhm.
those like are those the autographed ones, like the more rare ones, or no?
Yeah. A little bit. So some of them, yes, they're autographed for sure, especially the modern stuff. I think that's what I've gotten autographed the most. Which was a little bit weird because last year, during the ICCC,
Mhm.
I Ian McDermott, the Emperor, right, was there, and I've met him before, and I have a picture, autograph by him. But he was just there. He was like, there was nobody on his, on his queue, on his line. So I was like, dude, I'm just gonna go get another autograph. Like, it's gonna be so simple. But he actually doesn't sign old stuff, like the vintage stuff. He won't autograph that. And there's a story there, right, that I don't know, but yeah, he doesn't autograph like the 70s, well, technically 80s figures. It's got to be like more modern stuff, like from the
Interesting.
90s and on. So I was like, okay, so that was a little bit weird to me. um so I went back into the show, right, into the show floor. I bought a vintage collection Emperor for like 15 bucks, right, and I took it to him and I got that autographed. um so that's why most of the autographs I got are on like modern stuff, because apparently a lot of them don't like to do like like I said, like the real old stuff or the real vintage stuff. They won't do it. So like I said, I'm sure maybe they've gotten in trouble before. I don't know. There's definitely some stories there. So from that bottom row is half of them are autograph, and the second half are like the old stuff that I do have on card. And then on the top, it's just kind of like a mix of stuff. The multi packs. You see that little Star Wars sign. The
Mhm.
piece immediately underneath it is like the Maul family. So it's Darth Maul, Savage Opress, and Mother Talzin. And that one, Sam Witwer autographed it back in Celebration, like 2019. And I think that was one of my very first like autographs on anything. So I keep that one also. And I was so like starstruck, like I was so nervous to talk to him that he did ask, he's like, how should I make the autograph? Like your name or whatever. And I was just like, and
Yeah.
he's like, okay, I'm just gonna sign Sam Witwer, and that's all I got, like on the autograph, because I was like, I couldn't even talk. And then I was like, dang it, like I should have at least put, to Jose, to General Kenobi, like, or have him spelled out Kenobi, like on letters, like something. And of course, I thought about 10,000 things after I left. But in when I was right there on the spot, yeah, I froze. So all I got is Sam Witwer, as an autograph. So
I
that's
mean,
kind of like what those are. Um, like I said, not everything in there is like super rare or anything, but some of them are just because I like the way they look.
yeah, I mean, nothing wrong with that, but yeah,
Yep.
I remember my first time, like, going up for, like, an autograph and stuff, and, like, I wasn't, like I didn't know what the process was, like, how that kinda works, like but I was just, like, so, like, anxious. I was like, "Oh my gosh, like, I'm about to meet, like, someone,
Right.
like, oh my gosh," and now I kinda, like, understand the process. I still get the nerves of, like,
Oh yeah,
meeting
for
them,
sure.
but, like, now I kind of, have an idea, like, "Hey, this is what I want you to sign, this is the color, this is where I
Exactly.
want you to sign it," kinda thing, but, yeah, I totally get that, so I feel like
Yeah.
the first signature is always the toughest, but
Oh
it
yeah.
gets easier.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And now, to be fair, some of them do have rules, right? It's like, no,
Yeah,
you cannot ask for any sort of customization. You just paid for the autograph, so all you get
mhm,
is the name. And I
yep,
get that, technically, again, that's what you're paying for, right? But most of them are cool, and they'll be like, "Oh, do you want me to say something, or not say something, but put a phrase, or something like that?" So when I went up to the emperor with that figure that I was talking about, we were just chatting for a little bit, right? How's the show? Blah blah, all of that. Because, like I said, there was nobody there, like literally nobody on in the queue for him. Um, and so he's like, "All right, so what color do you want? All that stuff." He's like, "I'm gonna sign it right here. Is that cool?" I was like, "Yeah, perfect." And he's like, "So what? Should I make it out to somebody?" And I was like, "Yeah, could you please make it out to General Kenobi?" And so he's down here, right, like on his desk, like looking down at the signature. And he literally looks up. He's like, "Seriously?" And I was like, "Yes." And he's like, "Of course." And he puts, to General Kenobi, like there. You go. So it was just one of those things that I was like, why not, right?
yeah,
Might as well. But
that's
like I
funny.
said, yeah, like most of them, like I said, they're always cool, right?
Yeah.
But
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I've had a bad experience, but for the most part, they definitely have their rules.
yeah,
If you want like a quote, it costs more,
that's the
you
other
can
thing,
just get
correct?
the signature, it's like you can't sometimes you can take pictures of them signing it, sometimes it's like a no
Sometimes, yep,
photographs, like
no,
it's everyone definitely has their own rules and things about it, so you definitely have to ask rather than get
yeah,
yelled at because
that's
you
what I was gonna
didn't
say.
know.
Yeah,
So, yeah,
exactly.
I mean,
No, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and it's just it's part of the game, right? I mean,
totally.
I get it. They gotta get sometimes thousands of people done, right, in a few hours. So they don't want to extend, each interaction, if they don't have to. But
Yep.
like you said, most of them are very cool. Ewan was of course the busiest by far that I've gone up to, and he has a whole crew, right? Like you talk to like five
Oh,
people before you get to him. So they tell you, okay, what item are you having? I was like, okay, there's no customization, not even if you pay extra. You just get his name. You don't get to talk to him. No pick, like all of that, right? They're just giving you the rules. And I was like, dang it, man. I was like, all right, well. And in my mind, don't get me wrong, I was like, $300, and like I don't even get to like say hi. Like I get the not filming. Okay, that I understand, But at the same time, I'm like, it's freaking $300, dude. Like that's a lot of money.
Yeah. At
So
least let me say hello.
yeah, and but once I got, oh, and he said, I remember the last person was like, you can't like shake his hand, right?
Hmm.
Uh, and I was like, okay, well, it is what it is. And I finally get up to him, and first thing he does is like, "Hey, how you doing?" And I'm like, "Dude, I'm not gonna let Ewan McGregor, hanging." Like, so I shake his hand. I'm like, "Dude, great." He's like, "Oh, I hope you're having a good show. How's it been?" And I'm like, "Dude, like, amazing. Thank you so much for being here. All that stuff." He's like, "Yeah, no, thank you guys. Like, it's always fun to be around, the fans and stuff." And kind of like, here you go. And I was like, "Hey, I'm good." That was way more than I thought I was gonna get. So off I go. And it might have been, 10 seconds interaction, but I was like, that felt good. At least,
Hmm.
the man talked to you, acknowledged you, said hi. Like I said, shook my hand, even though everybody kept saying no, don't. And I'm like, hey, tell him.
Yeah.
um, so, but no, it definitely is sometimes a little bit of a minefield, right? How to like navigate especially some of the bigger ones, right? Some of the bigger stars they
Yeah.
got plenty of rules, but
They definitely do. I mean, most of the cons that I've gone to, like, usually they just have, like, the rows of people. It's got their banner, a little section where you do the line. But I think MegaCon was the first one that had, like, pretty big people. Like,
oh, yeah,
Hayden, Ewan,
yeah,
Tom Hiddleston was there. And, like, those 3 guys were the only people that were on the other side of the convention. And,
gotcha.
like, there was, like, a black screen with
Yeah,
their banner on it. Then you go in, it's all blacked out, so there's no seeing in to, like, take pictures. Because, like, with the other people, you could pretty much just walk to the table, like, take a
sure,
picture
yeah.
of them and then keep moving. Like, there was nothing. Like, it was so blacked out, there was no seeing into the table. I was
That's
like, "Oh
crazy.
my god," I was like, "This
Yeah,
is intense." Like,
yeah,
holy crap. But, yeah, I mean, I get it. Like, I totally get it. There's things that go on and things that ways of making your money and, what you're okay and not okay doing, but I was like, "That is intense."
yeah,
So,
yeah, absolutely.
yeah. And then I think this is the last image that you sent me.
Yes.
So,
So these are my details, right? They're not full. Trust me, I already got plenty to put in. I just haven't done it. And then right there on the wall, also sort of like I said, sort of that was another little bit of planning beforehand to have those floating shelves for the helmets.
mhm.
What I didn't plan, if you look at the bottom, what is that bottom right corner of the picture, I already got way more than I got floating shells.
Yeah.
So now I'm like, okay, well, where are the rest gonna go? So yeah, so just but down there's what, four that I haven't opened, by the way.
Mhm.
Um, and I have another one or two I forget somewhere else. So I'm already way past, the capacity. But same thing, right? In my defense, Hasbro has been putting out nice helmets lately, right?
Yep.
Within the last year and a half to now. So before they were kind of like one a year almost for a little bit, and now it seems like there's like seven out there that I want. So
Yep.
it's kind of hard. Um, and then so those used to be the win. I mean, they are Windows still, but I sort of just put how do you call it, those freaking like thicker covers on them.
Mhm. Like a
Um,
blackout.
yeah, it's like a blackout material, so I hardly ever open those. Of course, they're not. You can kind of reach them, but yeah, they're not very used anymore anyway. So yeah, and then off to the right, uh, that is my comic pack, I guess, collection. Those are some of my favorite, and I've actually never displayed them before this room. Like they were just kind of in a box. So finally, I was like, you know what, I need to put them up. They're some of my favorite because they cover like the expanded universe, right? Now Legends. So
Mhm.
all of those stories, some of those characters, of course, only came out in those stories. Thus, some of those figures only came out, in this line. So I always enjoyed that one. There's a few Grail pieces that I want to start tracking down, but they've gone up in price like surprisingly.
Yeah.
um yeah, there's There's the well, I guess the top one is still the Exeter Kun one with Ulrich, and that one, I mean, seriously, that one I've seen it for like a grand,
Wow.
and I think the cheapest that I've seen it go is like 800. Um, but still, that's a lot of money, for for just
Yeah.
two figures. The other one that's getting up there is the Jaster Miral, the Mandalorian ones. It's a
Hmm.
Mandalorian 2 pack. Um, that one actually, a buddy of mine that collects here in San Antonio also just got it like a month ago, maybe like 2 months ago, and I think he paid like 400 for it. So that one's it's getting up there too. Like I'm
Yeah.
like, when you start talking like Hot Toys territory, I'm like, ooh,
Hmm.
that's a lot.
Yeah, it gets tough. Okay, cool. Well, I appreciate you sharing your collection with me,
No, thank you.
or with everyone, really. But I do have some like closing questions.
Sure.
When did you and how did you kind of get into collecting? I mean, I know you mentioned like you used to,
Mhm.
play with toys. That's always been like a thing. But what kind of really got you into collecting?
Sure. So once I guess when episode one came about, I was still sort of buying to play with, like actual
Mhm.
toys. Like I would open them and actually play with them and stuff. But as I got a little bit older, somewhere in the 2000 early 2000s, right? Like let's say between episode one and two, my cousin, like I said, he was always a little bit ahead of me in that sense of knowing Star Wars and having the toys and stuff. He kind of started putting a few items like aside, like not opening them. So I was like, oh, like what's going on here? And so he was telling me, I was like, no, sometimes I like some that I'd rather just, I don't play with them that much anymore. I guess, we were also growing out of it. And he's like, so I'm kind of just, setting them aside for like later on. I kind of like the way they look on card and stuff. I was like, you know what? Maybe I start doing that. So by the time of episode two, pretty much every figure that I was buying was staying on card. Um, and then after that, I just kind of kept going. Like I said, I definitely wasn't playing with toys anymore. So I was like, it makes sense, to keep them nice and on card and all that stuff. Um, Believe it or not, it's only been somewhat recently that I've started like opening a little bit more stuff.
Really?
Yeah, and I mean that in the maybe in the last couple of years. Like before that, I was like, I kind of just want to keep it sealed.
Mhm.
But I started displaying some stuff, like on the details and whatever. And I'm like, you know what? Some of them look good, displayed, or you can pose them, or I like to see them more as like as a group, right? Like for example, like the Mandalorians, kind of want to see them together, that kind of stuff. But it's still a little bit hard to me, sometimes just ripping out a figure out of packaging. Like it still feels
Yeah,
wrong to me.
I get it. Okay. And then, well, I feel like I already kind of might know the answer to this, but what
Gotcha.
would you say is your most valuable piece? It could be monetary, could be like kind of just a memory kind of thing. I'm thinking it
Sure.
might be the Luke, but
Yeah, so that one's obviously, story wise, like I said, that's definitely up there. Money wise, actually, now that I think about it, it's probably not that cheap either, because it is a like I said, it's a Mexican produced figure.
Mhm.
Back in the 80s, that factory, Lily Ledy, was producing for not just for the Latin American market, but also for Kenner. So when Kenner had, they couldn't produce enough figures, they would tag them and they would send the figures up here, and here they would get packaged right into the regular Kenner card backs and stuff like that. So in terms of monetary, I have one of such figure. It's a Darth Vader. It's back there. So technically, the packaging and everything is Kenner, but the figure itself was produced or yeah, it was manufactured in Mexico. So
Alright.
um, there's a few like that, right? That like that combination. They call them MIMS, I think, made in Mexico, and those go for a few $100 now. Of course, depending on how rare they are, right? But so yeah, now that I think about it, that look, like I said, might, even as it is right now, like without accessories, it might still be, I don't know, maybe a couple $100 depending, like, so yeah. maybe that's the one.
Okay, cool. Well, that was all the questions that I had for you. I appreciate you coming on and sharing your collection with me. It's been great getting to talk to you. But
I
before we
appreciate
hop
it.
off, could you let people know one more time where they can find you if you have anything upcoming that people should be on the lookout for?
Absolutely. So, YouTube channel is General Kenobi's Bunker. You can find us under that name on Facebook, on Instagram, and on TikTok as well. Also, I would appreciate if you check us out on the second channel, where we produce the same content just in Spanish, called El Búnker del General Kenobi. So I would appreciate it if you guys check us out there. Follow us. Maybe check out a couple videos. We do like to do live streams as well, at least once a week. I've been trying to do twice a week, but it's sometimes it's hit and miss. So we try to go live, especially right now where Bad Batch is going on, right? So we try to go live to review the week's episode or episodes. And like I said, we do have our long-standing show, which is called The High Ground, where we have people, collectors or people just involved in the community, some artists and stuff like that, and just kind of showcase what they do and their love for Star Wars, really. So, again, General Kenobi's Bunker, basically all across social media, and appreciate it if you check us out on YouTube, especially.
Yeah, absolutely. And I will leave all your information down in the description. So that way it's
Thank
easier
you.
for people to find you, both your channels. But again, I appreciate you coming on, and I will see everybody next Thursday.
Thank you.